Excellent connection. There. It's been a while since I went live. I don't know who else is going to show up. Yo, what's going on, guys? I hope everybody's having a good turkey day. How does the audio sound? Wait, is Josh on? Is Josh live? It's Thanksgiving. I can guarantee you Josh is not live on Thanksgiving. I, on the other hand, am recovering from the flu. Hold on one second. Let me. As you guys can tell by my congestion, I'm not at anybody's Thanksgiving dinner. If you were having Thanksgiving, right, do you want me at your Thanksgiving dinner sounding all congested? No. The instant I walk into anybody's house, they're just going to be like, that's exactly what's going to happen. That's exactly what's going to happen. They're going to tell me to get out of here. Audio sounds good? Awesome. I'm actually running a new audio. Well, it's new. I've had it for a while. I've been using it for the videos for a while, but I don't, I've never live streamed with it, so yeah, I don't know. Yeah, my brain is a little funky at the moment because I'm sick. So yeah, no, not the flu from EDC, the flu from going over to my neighbor's house during Friendsgiving with their like 4-year-old daughter and their 1.5-year-old son, and getting the flu from them. Because as you guys know, children are just incubators for illness and disease. They're not that bad. But yeah, so somebody asked me on Twitter, they were like, does your voice get deeper when you're sick? And the answer is yes. It can get very deep. Now, it can get a lot deeper than that, like first thing in the morning. Or even last night. Like, it was just like, I had vocal cords like that big around, right? Like, it was... I'm pretty sure my voice was so deep that you couldn't hear it. Like, it was nuts. But, are any of you guys watching Kai, is it Kai Cenat or Kai Cenat? I never know how to pronounce the last part of his name. Are you guys watching his Mafia-thon? Dude, it's absolutely insane. Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, here's the thing, right? You guys only see one part of it here. Look at this. Look, there's that over there. Like, there's that whole setup. That's Alex Ross art, and then there's the camera's too low, but like those are Yamaha HS7s, I think, that I use for audio monitoring. And then you guys can't actually see it, but behind me right there, that is actually, hold on. I'm too tired and lazy to get up. That's right here. Look how dope that is. Yeah, that's pretty dope, isn't it? Like that's pretty amazing. Um, um, that's from Dominic Glover. Yeah, I had him commission a whole anime art piece for me, which is pretty dope. Like it's really cool. It's really cool. But yeah, Team Goku. But yeah, it's pretty sweet. But yeah, so happy Thanksgiving to everybody, right? Like happy Thanksgiving, guys. Do I need to make the audio louder? Because I can if I need to. In fact, I can actually do it from in here. Right there. Does the audio need to be a little bit louder, or where do we stand with everything? Where are the DC ones? I mean, here. I mean, do you want me to show you guys like some of the comics that I have mounted? Because I can't take the camera all the way over there, but I can bring some of them over here. Like, I've got the first. Sorry, audio's good. Okay. Yeah. Again, I'm sorry I'm so congested, but I wanted to like do something and talk to people. You know, since I've kind of been out for the last week or so. I feel like Mullet Man Comics is gonna be like, it's my chance to shine, right? He's gonna have like this massive video dump while I'm gone, just like totally steal my spot in the algorithm. But yeah, no. So okay. Okay, hold on a second. Give me 1 second. Because there's a whole bunch here that I could show you. Um okay. So giant size. You guys are gonna go nuts with a bunch of the stuff I have. Uh Flash. You guys are gonna go nuts on this Flash comic. Oh, and then definitely this. Uh, okay. Maybe one day we'll get popular enough that we can like get Kai Cenat on here, or at least like show up on a stream and be like, dude, let me teach you about Marvel, man. Let me teach you why Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet is the least interesting character that they will put into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Because if you know anything about Marvel, like Marvel Comics, like Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet is not remotely interesting. Like the X-Men are coming to the MCU, man, and if you thought Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet is powerful, I could name. I mean, hell's bells. I could name Jamie Braddock. Jamie Braddock. Franklin. 5 mutants off the top of my head who could kill Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet like that. Right? We would just wipe him and it wouldn't even be a comparison. I don't know. Maybe we'll end up on. It'd be cool to like talk to Kai Cenat. But anyway, yeah. So the first one is the first appearance of Doctor Doom. Right. This one is actually here. Hold on. Let me pull that up. There we go. This is the original origin of Doctor Doom. Right. So this one I have framed. I haven't done anything with it. Like I haven't had it autographed or anything like that. But this is a Fantastic Four annual #2. I'm pretty sure. Part of the because of the white frame here, part of the comic is cut off, so I couldn't remember what issue number it was. Fantastic Four #48. This is the first appearance of Galactus. Actually, I think it's the first appearance of Silver Surfer. Maybe it's the Watcher. Anyway, it's the very first part of the Galactus trilogy. Maybe it's the first appearance of the Watcher. Watcher, Silver Surfer, or Galactus. I can't remember which one. I've actually never listened to MF Doom. Like people tell me I should, but I've never actually listened to him before. This one's super dope. This is the first appearance of Reverse Flash, which is actually autographed by Joshua Williamson. Kind of a fun story. So, and I'll show you the final one that I want to show you guys is going to blow your all's mind because there's an amazing story with Jim Lee that comes with it. But the dog's just chilling over here. Star's chilling over here. Do you guys want to see Star? Feel like you guys are like, yeah, we want to see the doggy, the doggo. Yeah. So with the first appearance of Reverse Flash, I was at I think it was Dallas Fan Expo, and I ran into a fan named Matt, who's really more like a friend now. He's a really cool guy. We need to get back and start gaming with each other again. But I was texting him earlier today. We were talking about football. He said his dad was a Packers fan. I was like, good luck, bro. But anyway, he was trying to find a copy of this comic, and I think I grabbed one for him, and then I grabbed one for myself. So I went over there and like we were just kind of shooting the shit with Williamson for a little while with Joshua Williamson, and I was like, yeah, man, like he was asking, he's like, dude, are you gonna be at New York Comic Con? Because if you are, man, like we'll grab some beers or something like that. And I was like, I'm actually not gonna be there. So that was disappointing. I do want to like at some point go grab some drinks with like Joshua Williamson and Sal over at Comic Pop. You guys know him. And then actually, Scott Snyder hit me up on Twitter. I saw Scott Snyder's DM. I just didn't have a chance to respond to it because the flu. But Scott Snyder hit me up and he was like, hey man, we should do something about Absolute Batman. And I was like, bro, 100%. So I need to hit him back and be like, yeah, dude, let's do something about Absolute Batman. But yeah, so that's where that one got. That's where I got that one from. This is X Factor #1. So the funny thing is the original X Factor team. How much do you guys know about the original X Factor versus the original X-Men, New Mutants, all that kind of stuff? Like I don't know if you guys know how those titles all kind of like come together and how they all work together. But this is issue number 1. This initially started off with Bob Layton and Jackson Geese, I think. And then they left with issue number 4, which teased the first appearance of Apocalypse. And then Walter and Louis Simonson, I believe, took over with number 5. And then they became like the definitive guys, the definitive, you know, creators or whatever, writer and artist duo for the X Factor comics, all the way up until 1993, I think, when Marvel got rid of X Factor and the kind of undid it all. And then, oh yeah, I guess the Bears lost. Of course, snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. But yeah, okay. So the way all these comics tie together is that, as most of you guys know, you had like the original X-Men number 1 from Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. That goes on for 60-something issues, and then because it's just so unpopular, Marvel cancels it, but they just do reprints for like 30 issues. And so you come with issue number 94, which is the official start of Chris Claremont's run after Giant Size X-Men number 1, which is here. And I'll tell you guys that story, because that story is really, really cool. That was the first time I met Hickman, I think, Jonathan Hickman. But yeah, so that was wildly unpopular. So with Uncanny X-Men 94, Chris Claremont takes over. He starts his whole run, right? I think issue number 94 was like Count Nefaria. And then like with 95 going forward, he starts laying the groundwork for like the Phoenix and Dark Phoenix sagas. Well, the original X-Men team had largely just kind of been like removed, right? The team from Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. There were a couple holdovers, so like Cyclops and Jean Grey were still on the Uncanny X-Men team from Chris Claremont. But like not Beast and Angel, Iceman and Angel were on the Champions. I think it was the Champions of Los Angeles. Then they shortened it to the Champions. And Beast had been put on the Avengers with like issue number 242 or 244 or something along those lines. And so what Marvel did is, over the course of Chris Claremont's run, he started like phasing everybody out. Well, because of how popular Jean Grey was after like the death of her death at the end of Dark Phoenix saga, that Marvel launched X Factor. And X Factor was bringing back the original Stan Lee and Jack Kirby team on a team of their own. But that came after the first appearance of the New Mutants. And the New Mutants, of course, was kind of like the attempt under the Chris Claremont and I think Louise Simonson. She was a writer at the time. And I think the way that it worked, if I remember correctly, because there was, Sarah Bocelli. I think it was Sarah Bocelli. No, it was Ann Nesenti, I think it was. So Chris Claremont, John Byrne, Dave Cockrum, right, in various orders, they were working on the X-Men. Ann Nesenti, I think, was the editor. And then eventually I think Louise Simonson was the editor. And then Ann Nesenti was the editor after Louise Simonson, when Louise Simonson started working on New Mutants, which originally was Bob McLeod, but Chris Claremont, Bob McLeod. Anyway, that was the attempt to create a new, younger X-Men team, which was incredibly successful, right? It's not like it was trash, but the order of it is basically the original X-Men from Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, so X-Men number 1, and then that goes into Uncanny X-Men by Chris Claremont, which runs alongside New Mutants when they're introduced, which goes into X Factor, and then X Factor is eventually undone. The original X Factor team, that is brought back with Giant Size X-Men number 1, and then because the roster's so big, Marvel splits it. And so you have X-Men Gold and X-Men Blue with Uncanny X-Men and X-Men Volume 2. So, in any event, yeah, so X-Men number 1, this was cool. I'm going to tell you guys a story here in a minute, because this one, I ran up on Jim Lee with that comic, and it was like the greatest 15 minutes of my life. It was incredible. As a comic book fan, it was incredible. But yeah, so Giant Size X-Men number 1, right? This is the one that made the X-Men popular again after it was canceled from Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. So I had that autographed by Jonathan Hickman. And I met him at San Diego Comic-Con for the first time. And I rolled up there with, I don't know who I was with. I think maybe Sal or Benny at the time. And I was like, yeah, dude, I'm like a huge fan. Like, he knew who I was. And I was like, I mean, he didn't know, like, you're Rob from Comics Explained. He was like, you're the Comics Explained guy. And I was like, cool, that's good enough for me, man. Like, I don't need you to know the ins and outs of my life, Jonathan Hickman. I just need you to know that I run a channel called Comics Explained. Like, I'm all set. So, like, I was talking to him for a little while. And then I broke out Giant Size X-Men #1. He looks at it and he's like, dude, are you for real? And I was like, 100%, man. I was like, can you autograph it? And he kind of gave me a look for a second. I was like, I want you to like autograph it to me. Because I was like, I'm never going to sell this, right? And that totally changed his demeanor. One of the things, for those of you guys who don't know about like comic book writers, artists, things like that, they don't really like it when you show up with a comic and then ask them to just like autograph it, just like a general autograph, because more often than not, they know you're going to sell it. But for me, like I'm never going to sell this comic. Like it is Giant Size X-Men #1, signed by Jonathan Hickman as part. Well, it was during Marvel's marketing lead up to the launch of House of Powers of X, right? So like he was getting ready to start writing the X-Men. I was like, I want that autographed by Hickman. But that takes us into X-Men #1. So what I think it was I don't remember what fan expo I was at. A buddy of mine, Victor, was there. Victor Dandridge. You guys, I don't know if you guys remember, we covered that story. Uh, The Trouble with Love. Phenomenal story. It's an incredible comic book story. But Victor, he was working at a fan expo or something like that, and I think I hung out with him for a little bit. But it was at Denver. That's where it was. It was at Denver Fan Expo. Like an hour up the road. And I didn't know Jim Lee was going to be there, like before I got there, and so I was just like, holy hell. So I run up on, I'm running through there and I'm like, dude, if I'm gonna get an autograph from Jim Lee, it's got to be on something significant. And so I find a copy of X-Men, X-Men #1. I mean, of course it's worn, right? And it's got some age to it. But like I get a copy of this. And so if you guys have ever gotten a autograph from Jim Lee, then like you guys know the process is incredibly streamlined. But for those of you guys who haven't, getting an autograph from Jim Lee is not like going to get an autograph from like Scott Snyder for Batman, right? Or like Jeff Johns for Green Lantern or something like that. You don't just like roll up to a table, right? And just be like, here's my comic, after waiting in line for an hour, 2 hours, or like 10 minutes or whatever, however long the wait happens to be. And then like they autograph it, you talk to him for a few minutes and you leave. With Jim Lee, it's this incredibly just like streamlined process. So you buy a ticket online and then like you have somebody scan the barcode for the receipt and then they give you like a physical ticket. And so then you take the ticket up to the table. And so when I did that, I had the comic with me and I had it in a bag or something like that. And I think it was his wife, maybe. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was a woman who was there. And I was like, yeah, I have an autograph, I'm gonna get an autograph from Jim Lee. And she's like, okay, like what's your comic? And like I show her X-Men #1, and she's just like, and like she calls the dude over, which I'm like 99% sure it was Will Spertaccio. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, if you guys want, we could turn this stream into like a history of Marvel. And I can, because here's the thing, most of you guys don't know how much I know about Marvel because of the videos that I'm making these days, where I'm just like, here's what happens in Batman, and here's what happens in, this comic and that comic and Venom War and so on. Like a lot of like the total knowledge that I have of Marvel just sort of gets lost, right? People just don't know that I know so much. But still, so I mean, we can do that if you want, right? I'll teach you everything you want to know about Marvel, the bankruptcy and the whole nine yards. But um, yeah, so Will Spertaccio was basically an artist who came up around the same time as Jim Lee, and I think they were roommates at one point, but they're probably like really great friends, right? I think Will Spertaccio was one of the guys who left in '93 to form Image, but nonetheless, so like basically, this woman starts like calling people over, and it was really cool because they're all just kind of like just gawking at this X-Men #1 comic that I have. And I was like, yeah, I want Jim Lee to autograph it, like to make it out to me. And they're like, do you know what you're doing? And I'm like, bro, okay, you don't know who I am. If you're asking me that question, not to sound like a dick, but like, you don't know who I am. Otherwise, you wouldn't be asking me that question. But yeah, so ultimately I was like, yeah, man, like yes, I'm never gonna sell it, yada yada yada, and so they're just like, okay, so like they they take me over to Jim Lee, and I hand Jim Lee X-Men #1, and like no shit, Jim Lee spends like the next 15 minutes taking me down memory lane of like when he first got into comics, reading X-Men #1 from Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, on like his favorite stories. And it was just like this phenomenal experience that I will never, ever, ever be able to replicate. But like literally just like listening to Jim Lee relive his comic book childhood, it was an incredible experience. So we signed it for Rob, right, Jim Lee, and it just sits up on the shelf back there with the other ones. But yeah, it was one of the coolest experiences that I think I've ever had. But yeah, it was dope. But yeah, those are just a few of them. I mean, there's also like the first appearance of Adam Warlock in the Fantastic Four number, what is it, 40, 47, 67, 40? No, it would be 47. That was a Galactus trilogy. I think 67, yeah. And then there is the first appearance of Apocalypse and X Factor. There's the Trial of Magneto. There's the first issue of X Force. Um, yeah, I do not have New Mutants issue number 98. I'm trying to get my hands on that one. And like, there's a few others, right? But there's like a custom art piece that I have over there of it's a Red Lantern Bucky Barnes fighting a Blue Lantern Captain America. It's in black and white. It's not in color, but it looks amazing because I love black and white comic book art. But yeah. So give me 1 second, guys. I'm gonna grab some tissues and I'm gonna blow my nose because I feel like this congestion is getting to be a little much. But yeah, I got stiff nipples, man. Quit judging me, bro. I'm only human. What do you want me to say? Give me 1 second. I'll be right back. Oh. Man, you guys got me feeling all self-conscious. Oh, you're happy. Oh, oh, yeah, that's the other thing. I do need to get these autographed by Jim Lee, but I've got all 4 copies of the X-Men Volume 2, issue number 1 variant covers. There's only one of them that's in like decent condition, but they're all in like phenomenal shape. So this is at least an 8 in CGC. But I don't care about grading or anything. But yeah, so I mean I also have stuff like what is it? The first appearance of Omega Red, you know, all kinds of stuff like that. But the Black, White, and Blood comics are okay. They're nothing too crazy or incredible. But yeah, so I mean, if I'm gonna do like a history of Marvel, like, what do you guys want to learn about? Like, what do you guys want to know? You guys want me to tell you about like the bankruptcy, you know, and all that kind of stuff? Like, you know, the whole history of like Marvel as a company. You know, I don't know. I mean, what do you guys want me to tell you about? I mean, I don't know how long I'm going to be on here. Maybe like an hour, 2 hours, something like that. But you know, I'm here to keep you guys entertained. So, what do you guys want to know? I have read the Transformers comics. They're okay. They're hit and miss for me. Uh, yeah, I mean the Omega Beyond Omega level videos. I mean they were fun, but like we did them all. Like it got to the point where we were just like making up arbitrary caveats for characters just to have a reason to make a video. Right, like Superior Iron Man with the Infinity Gauntlet. Like once I made that video, I was like, okay, like this series probably needs to come to an end because we're just like making up like random things now. You know, just going on about all kinds of stuff in the beginning. You know, Beyond Omega level Raven. I guess maybe we never did. We never did make that one. The Secret Wars videos. Uh, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. We never did Raven. Okay. Wow. Book of Doom special presentation. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, you guys, like I said, I mean, I'm just kind of here chit chatting with you guys, you know. So I'm not, you know, I'm not picky on what we talk about. But if you guys are just kind of like, yeah, man, like, you know, give us the spiel on how like Marvel almost went bankrupt, you know, or something like that. I mean, I could do that. You know, that's fine. Um, a revamped, updated history of Marvel. Okay, so I'm actually working on that. You guys ever heard of something called the Smart Suit Pro 2? because I just found out about this not too long ago. Um, but on Straight Outta Latveria, that guy is amazing. Have you guys seen him? The Straight Outta Latveria guy, dude. His videos are awesome. He's basically just like Doctor Doom, and he's always all he does is just like talk trash about the Fantastic Four. It's hilarious. Like it's one of the best channels that you're ever gonna see. That's all he does is just lambast the Fantastic Four all the time. He's just like Reed Richards sucks. Susan Storm gets around, like right, like Ben Grimm is never gonna be human again. Like it's hilarious. He just like talks trash about the Fantastic Four the whole time. But yeah, um, the Squadron Supreme. I mean, I've heard about. I mean, I know of Squadron Supreme, and I don't think we ever covered like the original Squadron Supreme comics. But tell you guys about the comic collapse of the '90s. You guys want to know how Marvel Comics went broke in the '90s? Because it is kind of okay. So it's kind of a long story. And it goes back a ways. It goes back to honestly, it goes back to like the late '60s. Because there's the long version and then there's the short version. And the short version is, Marvel made less than intelligent business decisions, and like that's it. But the long version is just sort of like kind of kicking things off in the late '60s with like uh, oh my god, what was his name? Martin Ackerman, and just kind of going forward through like the era of Jim Shooter. But then once you start getting into the '90s, it's not just about Marvel going bankrupt, but it's also about Stan Lee building effectively Marvel Studios, or at least a precursor to Marvel Studios, in like or from the '70s we're starting in the '70s, going into the '90s, and then ultimately like Avi Arad saving Marvel as a company with like almost like this scene from a Hollywood movie where he like makes a pitch to a room full of investors. Um, yeah, I mean, I haven't live streamed in a long time, but yeah, I mean, Dan's doing as good as far as I could tell. I mean, the channel's running, so. Incredible Hulk drink story coming back when? I mean, it was a story I did once. I don't know how many times you could tell the story, but um, yeah. Any chances of finishing the Power Rangers comics? I guess maybe I should. I need to. It's been a while since I've caught up on them. I know there were like the zombie Power Ranger comics, the commies, the communist Rangers. I don't know if I don't know if that existed, but it'd be hilarious if it did, right? Like they all call it like it's comrade time, right? And they're like it's just like hammers and sickles and like the motherland and like it's the Mother Zord, I guess is what it would be. But yeah, no, I haven't. It's been so long since I kind of have to go back and like you know kind of rework it and restructure how I would do it. I don't know. My mind's a little fuzzy at the moment. So um, let's see. My videos get you through work. Awesome. Is Geek Culture Explained coming back? Maybe the biggest issue that I ran into with Geek Culture Explained, the reason why we stopped doing it, was because it reached a point where number one, there wasn't really any news worth talking about coming out of Marvel. Right? It got to the point where it was just sort of like a scooper is just like a person wearing blue jeans was seen on the set of a movie, and so people are just like, well, that's clearly whoever it is that I want it to be, and like that's what the videos turned into. And any kind of like explanation of what was going on in the MCU from a comic book side could just be covered on Comics Explained, and so in fact, it just became redundant incredibly fast. It was a channel that at the time that I created it, I just didn't realize had a very specific use case. And once Phase 4 kicked in and people just kind of stopped caring about the MCU, that use case didn't serve a purpose anymore. So there was really no reason to make content on the channel, and I wasn't motivated to make anything because there wasn't anything motivating to talk about. So it may or may not come back. I guess it kind of depends. I mean, truth, and this is an important thing to understand, right? Like, yes, the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been in a rough place since the start of Phase 4, and yes, they've made some not so stellar projects. I'm not mad about it because the reality is that they tried something new, and you can't really fault them for that. Otherwise, I mean, if they'd never done that, I mean, there are things that I would have done differently. But understand, like my pitches about Marvel Presents and Marvel 2-in-1 and things like that, that comes off the heels of the mistakes that Marvel made. So when Marvel never made those mistakes, I probably never would have come up with those ideas in the first place. So there's always something to learn regardless of how things transpire. And I think that even Marvel, kind of had to sit down and realize, okay, look, like there's a time to experiment and there's a time to try new things, and then there's a time to take a break. And I think that with them looking to the future of like after Secret Wars, which they're clearly fast tracking to, that they're just kind of like, we need to get into the X-Men. And it's the smartest thing, right? Because one of the things that people who don't read comics don't really know about Marvel is that the X-Men universe is gargantuan in size. If you're getting into Marvel right now, you're probably figuring that out because Marvel is just publishing a ton of X-Men comics. I would say half of them, if not maybe three-quarters, will be canceled within the first like couple years, right? Within like the next two, by 2027, I would say half to three-quarters of those comics will be canceled. But right now, I mean, they're publishing something like 12 solo or 12 comic books that all involve the X-Men universe. That are a combination of ongoing series and limited series. It's crazy. But the X-Men universe is enormous in size. With the Avengers, you get Avengers West Coast Avengers, whatever you want to call it. Great Lakes, if you're looking for like an Avengers movie that's campy and would feel like Deadpool. But for like serious Avengers stuff, you only really got maybe a couple of titles to base movies off of. You have a very, very limited roster there because while the Avengers roster may change, there isn't really any orbiting Avengers stuff, right? It's just superheroes, right? So if you want to read, stories about the individual members of the Avengers doing other things, you read like Captain America, or you read, Thor, or the Incredible Hulk, or something like that. But with the X-Men, if you want to read a whole bunch of like ancillary X-Men stuff, right? Like what's Cyclops doing outside of, the X-Men run? We'll read Uncanny X-Men or any of the other X-Men comics, maybe even a Cyclops limited series. So I say all that to say there's a lot more they could do with the Marvel Cinematic Universe with the X-Men, which I think is why they're just fast tracking because there's just so much stuff to be done there. So yeah, it's bonkers, how much stuff they're putting out. But at the same time, it also kind of makes sense. So um, who do I like more, Avengers or X-Men, or what do I enjoy more? I love the X-Men more. I mean, like I said, I've been reading the X-Men for over, at this point, I just say like over 25 years, whatever. I've been reading it for like years in Marvel, and it was the first Marvel comic that I actually got into. So, the Incredible Hulk drink story is gone. Why? I mean, well, I don't know if it's still on the channel, but like it may or may not exist. But yeah, I mean, it was just we were getting blitzed off of Incredible Hulks. I don't even really remember the details of that channel. I miss your channel on Twitch. It always brightened my day. What happened to it? Also, I just wanted to say I appreciate everything you do. I want to say that we got like a or not really cease and desist, but we got like a warning from Twitch because we were basically just like taking existing YouTube content and we were just going through and recycling it. That Twitch doesn't like you doing that, right? Twitch wants you to stream on their platform as what's basically an original content streamer, meaning you're streaming explicitly for Twitch. You're not taking content from other platforms and then just recycling them on Twitch. Now, I think that's just Twitch's attempt to stay relevant, in a landscape that's shifting in such a way to where they're struggling to stay relevant. I mean, I would argue guys like Kai Cenat are the only reason why Twitch hasn't died off as a brand. But yeah, because of that, it was just kind of like, okay, it's not really worth it. So ultimately we just kind of dropped it off. But yeah, thoughts on the James Gunn comments about the DCU? Are you talking about where he said that they're not going to be like Marvel and they're not going to greenlight projects before they have a script written? I mean, sure, it's a smart thing to do. Otherwise, you end up in a situation like Blade. Like, hey guys, Blade's coming. Okay, awesome. Like, when's it going to come out? This year. Cool. And then like that year comes and goes, and it's just like, well, I mean, it was until nobody liked the script and the director left and yada yada yada. So yeah, they had nothing done. There wasn't really anything lined up, and so yeah, avoiding situations like that is a very smart thing to do. Now, how long it'll stay that way, I don't fully know, because a part of me believes that like Kevin Feige and them didn't like announce Blade prematurely because they wanted to. They were probably forced to by Disney. I don't know. Maybe Kevin Feige and them just thought it was a good idea, which clearly it was not. But what James Gunn wants to do and then what Warner Brothers tells James Gunn to do are two completely different things. Because lest we forget, right? Like James Gunn is very high up there, and he controls a lot of what goes on in the DC Cinematic Universe. Him and Peter Safran, but even they answer to other people. And so I don't know the ins and outs of how that whole arrangement is done over there and who they answer to and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, the buck does not stop at James Gunn. So he gets his directions just like everybody else. Did I ever collab with Theory Savers? I don't know who Theory Savers is. Yeah, I have no idea who they are. Would I ever want any Agents of Shield characters to cameo in Secret Wars? Absolutely. Daisy Johnson would be great. Bring back Phil Coulson, because I mean, why not, right? Like, just bring the guy back. It doesn't matter. Oh, did you guys see the theory where somebody said that in Infinity War, the Incredible Hulk had unintentionally created a way to bring back Steve Rogers? Did you guys see that? Like, I don't know if you guys. I don't know when that was made. It was probably made some time ago, but it was a video that just kind of resurfaced on my TikTok feed not too long ago. So, will I narrate the MVC comic? I don't know what the MVC comic is. Thanks. Happy Thanksgiving. Top 5 DC events, Justice League stories. Yeah, thanks, Nicholas. FYI, guys, I don't really like doing a lot of like top 5 stories. It's just because like when I do that, like it gets boring. Key Light Systems, thanks. Yeah, definitely. But the biggest issue to that is it just makes the streams boring, because then like every question turns into like top 5 Wolverine moments, top 5 X-Men moments, top 5 most powerful this, most powerful that. And you know, it may be really entertaining for you guys, but for me it's just like top 5 Wolverine stories, okay, Old Man Logan and this, and it just it stops making it interesting. But yeah, so yeah, I'll answer this one, but like try to avoid, you know, I'll probably avoid any of the top 5, you know, questions for here on out. But top 5 DC events. I mean, Sinestro Corps War is number 1 for me. I love Sinestro Corps War. Probably Deceased. I would say that Scott Snyder's Dark Knight's Metal is probably my number 3. I love Dark Knight's Metal. Was it Dark Knight's Death Metal? That kind of felt like it was forced. It felt like he wrote it because DC told him to. You know, like, you know, just write a thing where Batman becomes Dr. Manhattan, whatever. You know, we need to reboot, so like, you know, do that. You know, like I don't know. Like Sal had a really funny moment on the weekly poll years and years ago where we were talking about Flashpoint, and he was saying like, you know, so he's like, I imagine the way the pitch went, you know, is Jeff Johns like, you know, so like, you know, Barry Allen's gonna wake up in a wholly new timeline where like the Amazons and the Atlanteans are at war with each other, and like Bruce Wayne dies, so his dad becomes Batman and his mom becomes the Joker, you know, all these kinds of things. But then like Reverse Flash appears and tells Barry that like he's the one that screwed everything up by saving his mom. So like Barry goes back and he lets his mom die, and then like the universe returns to normal. And somebody at DC editorial, like Dan DiDio, was like, but what if he didn't? And it's like, what do you mean, what if he didn't? Like, let's just reboot right now. And like they just launched New 52. And so, you know, I feel like that was the case with like you know, with Death Metal, you know, where like Scott Snyder's doing this whole pitch, you know, and he's just like, yeah, you know, this happens and that happens. And, you know, it turns out the Batman who laughs, you know, ends up taking a version of Bruce Wayne who became Dr. Manhattan in a different universe, you know, but ultimately he's defeated by the superheroes. And you're like, but like, what if he wasn't? Like, well, what do you mean, what if he wasn't? It's like, well, let's just reboot, you know, and then like they do the whole soft reboot, you know, and the post DC rebirth landscape, you know, and yada yada yada. But yeah, you know, I didn't necessarily hate Dark Knight's Death Metal, but it wasn't my favorite by any standard of measurement. And then I would say probably for the last 2 over at DC, I think I mentioned Deceased. I would say Dark Side War was like an incredibly fascinating story. Just the way that Jeff Johns reworked the entire history of the Anti-Monitor. And then I'm getting text messages from people. Um, oh, um, hold on. My neighbor wanted me to grab their dog, and I was like, I'm on a live stream. So yeah. I was like, I mean, if you can let her in, if you can't let her in, that's fine. You know, like I know I'm all diseased. Oh, I'm diseased. I got an illness, man. But yeah, no, dude, the flu. I will say, man, at 40 years old, the way the flu hits me, man, it's a whole different beast. But then I would say maybe the last one from DC is sorry, go see Bella. The last one from DC, I would say. What was the one that was more recent? Oh no, that was the finale to Deceased. I'd say probably Absolute that's happening right now. Moriwa. Thank you. I appreciate that. Blackest Night. Been falling asleep to my vids for years. All right, I appreciate that. There was a time when I didn't know how to respond to that, but I was like, okay, you know. Yeah, absolute DC. That's what's going on right now. Absolute Batman, absolute Wonder Woman, absolute Superman. It's DC Comics version of like Marvel's Ultimate Universe. Is all. Okay, girls, go upstairs, go. But yeah, they immediately, the Cure's more cowbell. Yeah, they immediately have the zoomies. So they just want to run around together. What video games am I playing playing at the moment? So right now I'm just playing Helldivers because I'm just casual until I find something interesting to play. Rob, did Marvel steal your Let's Begin for their What If Season 3 trailer? I don't know. Actually. I don't know. I mean, I don't really consider it stealing. I mean, look, here's the thing to understand, right? I don't care. Like when I put theories out there and ideas and all that kind of stuff, I don't care if Marvel takes it. I mean, sure, I guess, you know, like somebody somewhere would be like, I mean, you could do. I don't really care. All I want to do is see Marvel create like a quality product. So if Marvel like sits down and they're like, this guy Comics Explained has these phenomenal ideas, let's steal it. You know, I'd be like, you're not stealing anything, man. I'm giving it to you, right? Like you stole the merchandise that I put on the sidewalk in front of my house, right? I guess you stole it. No, not at all. I just wanted to make something cool, so I don't really care, you know, or anything like that. What kind of music do I listen to? Mostly EDM. Like I just got back from EDC Orlando a few weeks ago. Red Dead 2 was really fun. That was a great game. I would just indiscriminately hog tie innocent people and just like throw them into the river. It was pretty bad. I was pretty villainous in that game. What are my expectations for Hickman X-Men versus after you fell off after Inferno? It felt like a gut punch. Yeah, because as soon as Hickman left, Marvel started undoing everything he did. I didn't really have any expectations going into it. That's because when I was in San Diego before House of Powers Vex came out, I was talking to Hickman, and he was like, you know, I mean, I didn't. He's like, honestly, man, he was like, you know, worst case scenario, I read it for like 3 years. He's like, best case scenario, I read it for like 17 years, and I'm the new Claremont. You know, so I don't even know if Hickman had any plans long term after Inferno, and I'm not even entirely sure why he left after Inferno. Supposedly it was a whole Substack and you know, kind of going back more to like the creator-owned stuff, but you know, again, I'm not fully sure. So after, I mean, it left a bad taste in my mouth, right? The way they ended the Krakoa era, it was exceedingly rushed. I didn't really like it at all. You're a shareholder at IDW. You're trying to get them to grow and evolve and adapt. Any suggestions I should give them other than move away from licensing comics? I mean, I don't know that they have a choice. Truth to tell, like that's always kind of been the Achilles heel of like IDW and all those guys, like Boom Studios and so on, is they license properties and create characters, as opposed to what Image does, which is bringing creators on and then working out effectively a kind of revenue sharing deal, as I understand it, where Image provides, you know, the publishing side, but they own all the stuff that they create, you know. So, yeah, again, you know, I don't know the ins and outs of all that, but yes, I love East of West. East of West is really really good. What's Marshall doing? Somebody was like, Marshall, oh, you should go on a diet and take better care of yourself. Oh, okay. That's just Marshall being a dick. Ignore him. Right? You know, he'll figure out something else to do. I don't know. Go watch cartoon porn or something. But yeah, so yeah, I am feeling a little bit better. Right, I'm just feeling a little bit better. Just moving to my place, no furniture. No, this is the basement. This is the dungeon. I have a comic book community on Discord. Discord.gg / Comics Explained, I think is the link to it. But you know, here's the thing about streaming. I don't want to do it more often. It's, you know, it's hilarious because I don't know if you guys were following it. There was this whole thing where people were talking about how streaming is harder than like a 9 to 5 job. And I know like guys like iShowSpeed and people like that were talking about it. And while I'm not necessarily a streamer, like I am a content creator. And here's the thing: there's no hard and fast rule, right? Like it depends on how you create your content. I guess with streaming, it depends, right? I mean, if you're like with me, for example, I could get lost in Destiny 2. So for me, it would just be easy to stream Destiny 2 for like 16 hours a day, right? And I would just play it all the time. Now, no one plays that game anymore. It's a dead game. There's no reason to keep playing it. But that's just an example. The same thing with Helldivers, right? The reality is streaming games like that would become boring to the viewer because it's a lot of redundancy and a lot of grinding. And so the difficulty in streaming that kind of content comes into having to constantly engage with the viewership. And if you're a person who is not like extremely social, then yeah, I mean, if you're like an introvert who's like, I'm going to stream video games, then yeah, you're probably going to get burned out pretty quickly because you're going to have to be social in the digital space in order to grow your audience. There's a reason why guys like Kai Cenat got as big as he did, right? Because he would build like whole set pieces, right? So he's like, we're going to play this, Batman game, for example. And he would like turn his whole basement into the Batcave, which was cool. But he would make it an incredibly like immersive experience for his fans. And because he put so much work into it, they adored him as a creator. But on the other hand, there's me, right? Like for me with Comics Explained, like say that like it's Wednesday, and like the new Venom comic came out. I can have that video done like that in 30 minutes, and within like 3 hours or 4 hours, depending on how fast I want them to edit, they can have that video done and out, right? But like my actual workday on average is anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour, maybe an hour and a half. All right, it just depends, because I've hired an entire staff to take care of all those things for me, right? So I can just produce a lot more content, a lot of content a lot faster. Now, a lot of that's also because I've been reading comics for a silly amount of time, right? So if it's like it's hey Rob, this new X-Men comic has come out and Deadpool is doing some crazy thing, like give us the history of Deadpool. Then it's like, okay, cool. So like, he was created by Rob Liefeld, appeared in New Mutants issue number 98, and he had some history with Cable that we never really knew about. Yada yada yada. That follows for a while. He got a significant miniseries called the Circle Chase, I think it was, by Circle of Four, I think is actually what it was. It was something like that. By Mark Waid, I think, and then you go into like Joe Kelly's run, and Joe Kelly turned him into like a dark humor character, and Ed McGuinness drew it for a little bit, then he left, and then Joe Kelly left, and he only had Deadpool break the fourth wall like twice, right? And then it goes to like Gail Simone and all these people until it gets to Christopher Priest, and then Christopher Priest has Deadpool breaking the fourth wall all the time, right? And that's how Deadpool became the Deadpool that we know now. It's not hard for me to tell people that, because I just know it because of all this stuff that I've been. Kai Cenat. Okay, cool. I've never known exactly how to pronounce his last name, so if he sees this, don't take offense, man. I mean, I don't know that he will, but yeah, I never really knew how to pronounce his last name, but yeah, I could teach people that, right? Because like I just know all that, right? Like that kind of thing. Yeah, the white dog is my neighbor's dog, and then that one right there, that's Star. That's my dog. She's an idiot. Like she's an idiot. But yeah. So I would say for me in what I do, because so much of my stuff is unscripted, I don't work nearly as hard as like Benny did, for example, at Comic Story in the very beginning. There was a time when I did script my videos in for a while, and a lot of you guys remember that when I just didn't care, and I was just not interested because I was getting burned out. But that's when it was working like 17-hour days every day for like 3 years. Benny and I used to talk about that all the time, right? Because people would always ask like, how did you guys like blow up on YouTube? Like what was it like in the early days? Because it's okay. How many of you guys have been here, a part of my channel or Benny's channel, or like any of the comic book YouTube channel, comic book YouTube scene since like the very beginning, right? Back when it was like myself and Eris and Sal and Comic Book Girl 19, if you remember her, and like Comic Book Cast, right? Like how many of you guys remember those guys, right? Because it was a really interesting. It was one of the last serious conversations that I had with Benny, where it was we were just kind of like reminiscing on how everything started. He and I would get breakfast, and I think Dan started coming along shortly after, but he and I would get breakfast every like Saturday, which I think turned into every Sunday. And yeah, we would just kind of like chit chat, and hang out and everything. I'm gonna have to like stop talking about Benny because it's starting to like I'm starting to get emotional just like talking about him. But yeah, it was one of the final conversations we had, and it's in a lot of ways there are times when I kind of have to like sit down and remind myself of like what the comic book YouTube scene was like back then. Like back in 2013, 14, 15, when we were first like starting it, because like it was not what it is now, right? So if you were like casually comics, right, or you are oh, comic tropes, right, or like Mullet Man comics, or even like Dope Spill, right, Dez over there, or something like that, you know, on some level, you had like myself and Benny and Eris to like kind of model yourself after to a degree. And it's not to say that like we were the archetype for every comic book YouTube channel. I mean, I can almost guarantee you there's certainly comic YouTube channels that were out there that had never heard of myself or Comic Storian or anything like that. So I think it'd be kind of like arrogant and disingenuous to say that like, yes, like everybody model themselves after us. But I simply say that to say there was nothing to model yourself after. Right? There was nothing for me to model myself after in terms of like how I presented my videos. Which is why, like in the very early days, you can actually just kind of like see it forming. Yeah, New Sage is a good example. Or like what is it? Incredible Banner, or was it Hulk Banner? Something like that. An Incredible Hulk related YouTube channel, that kind of thing. But yeah, like the idea of going through and having something to model yourself after just simply wasn't there. And so when Benny and I were coming onto the scene, we were just sort of creating a niche that didn't exist, right? Because even as big as like Eris was, which he was the biggest at the time, it was in a lot of ways, I think Eris's videos were one part talking about, here's Batman, or here's a little history of this character, something like that. But like 99% of his videos, even at the time, was like, here's a review of the current Batman comic. Here's a review of this comic, or something like that. There wasn't really anybody saying like, hey guys, so like Scarlet Witch just got announced for Age of Ultron. I'm gonna make you an expert in 30 minutes. Right? There was nobody saying that. There was no one saying like, welcome to the Complete Stories series, where we take dramatic stories and read them dramatically back to you, or where we take stories and read them, and all that kind of stuff. Vinny's intro at the time, and taking like the Sinestro Corps War and bringing that comic to life, in a very entertaining way. There wasn't really anybody doing that, and so it was, when Vinny and I were talking about that, it was like we were just kind of reminiscing on what it was like back then, right? Like sitting in a hotel room with a sheet over our heads. Because we couldn't afford any programs like Deverberate, that takes the reverb out of a space. Because we couldn't afford any of that high end stuff, right? We couldn't afford staff, so like working 17-hour days every day for 3 years before we could like hire a staff and afford to offload some of that work. Like there wasn't, none of that stuff existed, but it was, yeah, man, like we kind of reminisce on the grind, right? And there were times we would kind of sit back and say like, whether it was directly because of us or not, we can at least say that we were some of the earliest pioneers in what the comic book YouTube scene has become, right? To be able to kind of like and it's one of the most incredible experiences to be able to like sit down and look at like an entire community on YouTube, and to say that like the Trinity, right? Myself, Benny, and Sal were instrumental in like turning it into what it is now. Like it was an incredible experience. Like it's incredible, to be able to say, that I was instrumental in creating it. I don't know, because I guess maybe on some personal level, I always wanted to leave my mark on the world, so to speak. Something that the world would always remember my name for some reason. And maybe it was a pride thing. I don't know. Maybe it was just trying to derive a sense of purpose and meaning in the world. I have no real clue. But it's good to be able to sit back and say that like I did, right? Like for whether people loved me or hated me, or in the case of Marshall, think I need to go to the gym. That it is, people will be like, Rob Jefferson. Yeah, I remember him. Like he was the comic book YouTube guy. Somebody be like, yeah, Comics Explained. It's an incredible feeling. It's a cool feeling. But happy Thanksgiving from that weird dude who took a selfie with you in the bus at UC. Dude, you were cool, man. Dude, okay, yeah. So I can't remember your name. But yeah, you were cool. Ahmed. Yeah. You were cool, man. Yeah. So I was on the bus. Was it when we were on the way out? Was it like Saturday? I think it was. We were on the way out, and yeah, we rode a bus from home base from the Rave Hotel, and yeah, this dude runs up. He's like, "Hey, man, your Comics Explained, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, dude." It's like he takes a selfie with me, and like, yeah, yeah, we were chilling. I don't know if it was on the bus or if we were just walking out, but yeah, that was really cool. That was a really fun experience. Um, but yeah, yeah, it's just it's one of those weird things. Where uh, Bella, chill. Um, or yeah, it's just yeah, it's a weird bit of history there. It's a weird bit of history, Yeah, don't worry about the trolls, guys. If they had a life worth living, they'd be out living it instead of trolling people on the internet. So, um, but yeah, it's just it's one of those things where yeah, there's uh, yeah, it's a massive legacy with all this stuff. But yeah, I've watched bits and pieces of Justice League Unlimited, but honestly, it was okay. It was for me, it was okay. Like I was watching through Batman Beyond, for example. I was talking to Mariah about it, and I was watching through Batman Beyond, and I was like, Bella, go upstairs, go, chill. I was watching Batman Beyond, and I was like, yeah, it's okay. It's no Batman the animated series. Uh, and Mariah took it personally. She took personal offense to it. It wasn't one of those things where like I troll you guys, and I'm like, of course Teen Titans Go is better than like Teen Titans. What fool would believe otherwise? It's just it's not like that where I'm just like giving you guys a hard time. But with Batman Beyond, it was just kind of like it's a thing that exists. It's okay, like it doesn't really do a whole lot for me. Um, but yeah, it's yeah, I know people are just like what, but yeah, she took it personally, like she was so mad. It's not as mad. Okay, so there's two types of Mariah anger. There's Mariah when she's frustrated, when I'm just egging her on, just because I can. And then there's like Mariah when she's pissed. That's usually when it's like, oh, okay. Like Mariah when she's pissed is a sight to behold, man. It's almost scary sometimes. But yeah, like giving her a hard time and busting her balls. The easiest way to do that is to talk trash about Avatar: The Last Airbender or talk trash about Beyonce. That pisses her off to no end. It's just like, yeah, Beyonce came out with Cowboy Carter. It's like, it's probably overrated. Like that's gonna send her over the edge. Like she's hardcore into the Beehive. She won't say she is, but she is. Did they make a mistake switching from Kang in the MCU? Nope, because Kang is a useless villain. Kang is the guy who shows up in like an Avengers comic because nobody knows what to do with it. And it's like, Blarg, I'm going to try to defeat you guys so I can conquer the world this time. Oh, I've been defeated, and he goes back to his time. There's no real overarching meaningful plot with Kang, and like there never really has been. So Kang's not, yeah, he's not really overly interesting. Have I seen any of the Marvel Rival stuff? Yeah, me and Josh at Dinner Nerds were talking about it. Um, I don't know. It's not really that. If I wanted to play Overwatch, I'd play Overwatch. So, don't I dare talk trash about your goat Aang? Oh yeah, I mean, Aang sucks. No, just kidding. um, but yeah, the Secret Wars. What Secret Wars pitch? Um, I mean, I don't know if I had a Secret Wars like a pitch for the Secret Wars movie. Why am I downplaying Kang from the comics? Name 3 story arcs from King to Conqueror that had a lasting, meaningful impact on the Marvel Universe in such a way that it irrevocably changed the way that King functioned as a character. And I'm not saying, the whole Infinity, or not the Infinity, the Celestial Quest story, or whatever it was, in the 90s when they were like, Kang is actually a Mortis. No. We're not talking about how like they added, yeah, Avengers Forever. We're not talking about how like they added that in to reconcile Kang and Immortus as being the same character and to connect them. No. Kang has never been a character, like Kang is not a villain where if he didn't exist, it would irrevocably damage Marvel Comics in such a way to where it would feel diminished. No, if you never saw Kang in Marvel Comics again, nobody would care. You can't say that about Captain America, Spider-Man, Doctor Doom, the X-Men, the Avengers, the Fantastic Four. You can't say that about anybody else, right? I mean, another really good example is Big Hero 6. Like, yes, Disney made their whole version with like Baymax and everything, but Big Hero 6 was a Marvel Comics story with like Silver Samurai and I'm pretty sure Sunfire. It was an Asian themed superhero team. So if you never saw it again, then it wouldn't, it doesn't matter. Not to say the characters don't matter, but the concept of the team didn't really even matter. So again, Kang is not that relevant of a character in Marvel. So it was a smart idea to drop him and to go in favor of Doctor Doom. It was not a smart idea to introduce Robert Downey Jr. as Doctor Doom. I think that Kevin Feige overestimated fan reaction to Robert Downey Jr. and underestimated fan desire for Doctor Doom. I think that was a mistake that he made. Vision Quest. I mean, the Celestial Madonna, maybe, I guess. Okay, cool. So like Mantis is gonna have some OP kid. Oh, okay, that's cool, I guess. Why has Kang lasted 60 years? Because he makes for. I mean, it's not to say Kang doesn't have interesting stories, right? Only Myself Left to Conquer, the greatest Kang story that's been written in decades, and I would argue probably the greatest Kang story ever written. But it's a solo comic about Kang that's circular in nature, right? Like it's a self-contained circular comic. If it had never been written, who like it wouldn't have had any meaning on anything. So no, like it's not that important. You've been a fan since I was Marvel Explained. Yeah, that's a long time. Yeah, I mean Robert Downey Jr. can certainly pull off Doctor Doom. The reason why I say Feige overestimated that is here. Okay, so here's a side. I was talking to Josh over at Den of Nerds, right? We were doing a stream over there, and we were kind of like spitballing these ideas back and forth. And I think that the idea that I had thrown out there was that that Doctor Doom. Oh no, Josh had this idea. Josh had this really really cool idea, where the fan theories that people are coming out with right now are that the Doctor Doom played by Robert Downey Jr. is a variant of Tony Stark. But the question is, what if that's not the case, right? What if Tony Stark is a variant of Doctor Doom, right? That like in almost every universe, Doctor Doom becomes a villain, except for like a few different times where he becomes a good guy. And so in the universe where the Fantastic Four come from, Doctor Doom, right? RDJ's Doctor Doom comes from that same universe. So like imagine if they hadn't, announced that RDJ was playing Doctor Doom. And imagine that like either at the end of the Fantastic Four movie or one of these films, maybe like at the end of like Doom War, or Doomsday rather, whatever it happens to be. However, before they reveal the identity of Doctor Doom, that there's this point where Reed Richards is talking to the TVA or whoever it is that he's working with, and they show him like the Avengers, right? And they're like, this is Tony Stark and so on and so forth. And Reed's like, that's not Tony Stark. And they're like, what are you talking about? And he's like, that's Victor. And you like cut to the scene because maybe you kind of like intersplice it. So like, it's like one of those scenes where like it's drumming up to like some big reveal, but you don't know what it is. So like the music is becoming more and more amped as time goes on. And so like, it kind of jumps back and forth between like something Doctor Doom is doing, like some big battle he's having or something along those lines. And like the Fantastic Four talking to, the TVA or whoever, but it's establishing the significance of like Doctor Doom. And, that's where Reed is like, no, like, Doctor Doom kills like all these, the Council of Kings or whoever. And so like just before the moment where they reveal, he's like, no, that's Victor. Right? Like, I mean, don't let him fool you. He fooled us in our universe. And like the helmet pops back on Doctor Doom and like you blow the audience away by showing like it's Robert Downey Jr. And that like Tony Stark in the Marvel Cinematic Universe was a variant of Doctor Doom, which makes Tony Stark's sacrifice in the MCU even more significant when you realize that like he was supposed to be a bad guy, right? But instead, like for whatever reason, he ended up becoming a superhero. And so you could add some small little thing here and there or something along those lines. But it was there were a lot of things that they could have done. But fan anticipation and excitement for Doctor Doom is really where it was at. Right? Like fans just really wanted to see Doctor Doom in the MCU. They didn't really care who played him. I don't think people expected RDJ, and I think Cillian Murphy would have been a much better choice. But I think Feige sort of looked at the state of Phase 4 and was like, we need to get everybody hyped up again, right? So it's like, Robert Downey Jr. is going to play Doctor Doom. We're going to pay him $100 million, or something like that. And so they just throw it out there, and I think that what they should have done was just revealed Doctor Doom, right? Like just have him march out there, and just be like the time of doom. Have like some crazy huge, reveal thing, like when The Rock came out to introduce Black Adam and promised us, I made this promise that he would never be able to deliver on, and that it's like like Doom's time has come, and like Doctor Doom appears on stage. You never see his face. You never find out who the actor is, right? And like that alone, I mean that alone would have just sent the top off of that place. But then revealing that it was Robert Downey Jr. I think was not the smartest decision. Give me 1 second, guys. I'm gonna let my dogs out. I'll be right back. Okay, girl. Stop. Okay. Yeah, I'm in a basement. um, yeah. Uh, yeah, it's the inverse of Iron Lad becoming king. Exactly. But yeah, so that's what I would do. That's what I would have done. But again, it's the MCU did what the MCU did, and there's no one doing it. So, uh, put King posters in my office. uh, you watch the Iron Man movie separately? Wow. This window right here, it goes into a basement well. But, yeah. Uh, when did I become a Captain Carrot fan? I love Captain Carrot. I don't remember off the top of my head when I became obsessed with Captain Carrot. I think it just hit me one day. I was like, "This is a rabbit with Superman powers," and I was like, "This is amazing!" And I think I just fell in love with the idea after that. A super bunny. I thought it was just the coolest thing ever. So yeah, it was never with like the original Captain Carrot and the Zoo Crew. I have read that comic run, and it's every bit as goofy as you think it is. I mean, there are points where it's just the epitome of total madness. But it was a fun comic. It was a fun comic to check out. I love the character. But Flex in the '90s, yeah. um, when did I become a Black Bolt fan? All right, Wes, you get the ban hammer. Wes gets banned. That's not true. I'm not going to ban you, Wes. I should. I'm just kidding. Thank you for years of being. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Um, but yeah, Captain Carrot's OP. Will comics evolve into something else eventually? I don't know. Um, I don't entirely know that they will, because I think that comics is one of those industries where it's been around for so long and done things a certain way for so long that it's just kind of etched into the public consciousness, that that's just how things get done, right? Like physical cartridges for video games, right? It's only been within the last, really maybe decade or so, the games becoming like digital, where like the biggest thing, right? Where it was usually just kind of going with like physical copies, right? It started in the PC space and then worked its way to consoles, and that's why you get a PS5 digital and a PS5 physical disc. And I know there are people who were just like physical disc, for all time. I don't blame you, right? I mean, you want to control the games you buy, but I think that the comic book industry is one where it's just been doing things for so long. Now, do I think that like single issues are going to stay a thing? No, and I don't think they should. Sal again had this really good idea years ago, where he was talking about the idea of removing single issues and just focusing on trades. And so stories just come out at like 6 month periods, um, and like that's it, right? They just kind of come out in these chunky time periods, and you just get like a Spider-Man story once every 6 months. I like that idea. I'm not against that idea. It makes it easier to keep track, because I mean, you guys know, right? Like like remember when Doomsday Clock came out, right? Because of like publishing delays and issues with I think Gary Frank's art and that kind of stuff, that a story that was supposed to wrap up in something like 12 months ended up taking almost 2 years to finish. And so by the time issue number was it 12 came out, you had to go all the way back to like you had to go back like 3 months to read issue number 11, and that was just incredibly frustrating. um yeah All I know is Comics Explained needs to respect the fact that Spider-Man would absolutely accept the new New York Lego store giving him a complimentary Lego set for saving the city multiple times a week. Yeah, that's a fair point. Oh man. Happy Thanksgiving, man. Quick question. Have I seen the Batman? And if so, did you enjoy it? And are you looking forward to the Batman Part 2? Yes. Actually, I just watched it, I rewatched it again maybe a couple weeks ago. Yeah, the Batman's fantastic. Honestly, I get that like James Gunn has this whole thing between the Batman and Penguin. Now, again, there's no absolute here, right? The Joker, Joker was phenomenal with Joaquin Phoenix. Joker Part 2 was garbage, right? So there's nothing to say that like the Batman 2 from Matt Reeves is going to be every bit as good as the first, right? Nothing's known until the movie comes out. But assuming that Matt Reeves can, lightning strikes twice, assuming that it happens for him, if I'm James Gunn, I would be like, okay, Matt Reeves, like you are the Batman guy, right? Like you handle everything in the Batman mythos, right? You oversee the development of shows and you have the showrun and all that kind of stuff, right? You're effectively like the executive producer of all those things, right? So you oversee it all. And yeah, let me know what you want to do, and I'll let you know whether or not it falls in line with what I want to do. And like that's it. That's what I would do. Yeah. Because honestly, it would allow things to work in a way that's not that dissimilar from like editors, right? Editors do have a lot of duties when it comes to comics, but one of the jobs of editors in comics is, say for example, that somebody's writing, comic book writer A is writing Spider-Man, comic book writer B is writing the X-Men, and so the writer for Spider-Man wants him to like go into space, and hang out with the Silver Surfer or something like that. Well, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense if, Spider-Man is currently in the X-Men comics, hanging out with the X-Men. And so the job of the editor would be to, the Spider-Man editor, it's to go to the X-Men editor and say, hey, what's Spider-Man doing right now? Is he doing anything in your comics? Right? And the X-Men editor would just be like, no, not really. It's like, okay, cool. And like he just goes back and says, yep, you got the green light. But if the X-Men editor is like, actually, he's hanging out with Cyclops and they're, I don't know, just beating Wolverine over the head with wiffle ball bats, then of course you can't do it. You can't have Spider-Man go into space. They can also go to the editor-in-chief, but editor-in-chiefs usually have to do with much bigger things than that. Making sure that all continuity is maintained and everybody, having all kinds of stuff. But the fact is, you kind of have to maintain continuity to some degree. Hence the example of like DCU, where DC ignored that and pissed off the fan base. So yeah, you would kind of have that role with what's going on in like the movie scene, right? Where you have like Matt Reeves, who's like, okay, James Gunn, so like I want to have this story where we bring in Hush, and like Batman has to deal with Hush like right now, and Matt Reeves is like, actually, that's not going to work because in this upcoming movie that we have going on, Batman's going to be dealing with this, so we can't have Batman in two places at the same time. It's going to create continuity issues. So Matt Reeves has to hold off, on the movie that he wants to make, but. What are my hopes for the new Fantastic Four movie? That's a good question. I think that I'm not concerned about how Marvel's going to handle it, but the overall feeling that the Fantastic Four has to give is a story of adventure and stakes. It needs to feel like some kind of cross between like Indiana Jones and Star Wars. Not in the sense that like, you have like Reed Richards running around with a lightsaber, which don't get me wrong. The Thing with like a lightsaber dressed as a Jedi would be amazing. Imagine Johnny Storm as like a Sith Lord. Like that would be so dope. No, but in the sense that the Fantastic Four, really ever since like the late 1960s, they're not really the team that focuses on like small time things, right? It's not like, oh, we're the Fantastic Four, and here comes Mole Man again, and we got to fight him because no. The Fantastic Four is a team of exploration. It's a team of pushing boundaries, right? It is a team of seeing what's out there, right? Like just almost like a Star Trek. Maybe Star Trek is a better example than like Star Wars, but kind of like this exploratory thing. But it also needs to have a sense of adventure and stakes. What if they fail? Like whatever it is that they're doing. That's what the movie needs to do. It needs to have that kind of sense of wonder, right? That almost makes us feel like kids. Which honestly, if you want a perfect example of that being done, go look at the original Fantastic Four films from the early 2000s. Not the Roger Corman one from the 90s where the giant fake hand waves out of the car. but the one from like the early 2000s, right? Fantastic Four and Rise of Silver Surfer, kind of. That movie wasn't that great, but what they were great at doing was creating just like a whole entire feeling of wonder and exploration and adventure and fun. And like that's what the movie really needs to capture. So yeah, a lost. Oh, okay, well, see, that was my original idea for the Fantastic Four film was a Lost in Space style thing. That what they would do with the Fantastic Four is they would tie it in canon wise with the events of like Loki season one. Now you can't really do it now because so much of what happened in the Loki TV series is largely just forgotten by most people, right? It's not just in the public consciousness. So the best time to have done this would have been to release the Fantastic Four movie between Loki season one and season two. But again, that all goes back to how I would have handled Phase Four completely different. But if I were doing it on the way that I would have done, at the end of Loki season one, when the multiverse snaps back, right? Like the multiverse explodes into existence. That's when you go into Fantastic Four. And the idea behind the Fantastic Four film is that they're an exploratory team. They've been around for a while. We don't need their origin story because they're in the public consciousness, right? Like they went into space and they got hit with cosmic rays and they came back with powers. Done. Right? Like you tell their story in like the opening scene of the movie, the same way you did with like the Incredible Hulk and Edward Norton, right? Like Edward Norton's Hulk. And so what you would do is you would say that like when they went out into the multiverse, they kind of left like a trail of breadcrumbs, right? Like back to their universe, so to speak. Although I think it would be hilarious if they were just leaving like loaves of bread in space to find their way back. I don't know why that's funny to me, but I feel like that would be hysterical. But no, they basically left a way back for them to get to their universe. But when the multiverse bounced back, like boom, it all just popped up. They couldn't find their way back. They were literally lost in the multiverse. And so the entirety of the Fantastic Four film is them trying to find their way back home, right? Sliders meets Lost in Space. Along the way, they learn about the Council of Kings. And then at the end of the Fantastic Four film, they're captured by the Council of Kings, right? But again, there's all kinds of other little things that would have gone in there that would have kind of, it's that like the Fantastic Four figuring out that the Council of Kings was kind of behind everything would sort of illustrate the fact that because they could figure it out without any external help, it shows how intelligent they are. Just little things like that. But nonetheless, there's that's the kind of thing that I would have done. But well, again, I do read comics, but and that's a good point, and that's what I usually try to remind Josh of whenever I'm on Dinner for Nerds is there's a difference between sitting down as a comic book fan who's been reading comics for almost 30 years and looking at things like retcons and all that kind of stuff, the circular story of how Cable became Cable because of Apocalypse and all that kind of stuff, and it makes sense to me, right? But to like a soccer mom or a hockey dad, right, who's dropping their kid off to practice at 2 o'clock and decides they just want to go see the Fantastic Four film, that it needs to make sense to them, right? And they don't know about things like retcons and all that kind of stuff, and you don't want to make it overly complicated. So, yeah, it's they're gonna get female Silver Surfers. I mean, yeah, clearly, yeah, they're not gonna have her a naked Silver Woman just flying through the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, all this gonna have like every 15-year-old boy who goes to see that movie is just gonna be like, boobs, like that's that's all that's gonna happen. They're never gonna do that. They are never going to do that. Like they're definitely gonna clothe the female Silver Surfer. Yeah, it's yeah. Do I think Howard Stark will be mentioned in the Fantastic Four? I don't know. Maybe. I mean, there's no reason to, you know. Alex, what's up, man? I need a chimney behind me with a cigar and a robe. Oh man, this is like fireside chats, fireside comics with Rob. I could do that. I mean, I've got a fireplace upstairs. Like I could just turn that into a set piece, right? And just welcome back to Comic Piece Theater. In today's video, we will be discussing some comic with Silver Surfer doing some things. I don't know. Pip the Troll putting the Infinity Stone between his toes. But yeah, cosmic leggings, yeah. Yeah, I don't know how they're going to square that circle. But yeah, I mean, okay. I mean, if we're going down this rabbit hole, but we won't go too deep down this rabbit hole. But if we're going down this rabbit hole, I mean, if you're gonna have a Silver Surfer who's a woman who's flying through space, half naked, I mean, who's your choice for the actress? This may get our stream in trouble. I don't know. I'm sure somebody on Twitter is gonna be like, oh, a reason to be angry, right? And then just start crapping all over the question. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, who would you pick? Yeah, Fireside Comics. It's been a horrible year for you. Just wanted to say thank you for your content. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. That's rough. Yeah, that's rough. Yeah, it sucks. But yeah, people vape. That happens in the world. There are people who do that thing. So Sydney Sweeney. That's 99% of the responses are going to be coming out. If we're going to have a female Silver Surfer flying through space half naked, Sydney Sweeney. Like most people are just going to say her character. Yeah, I guess. But War Game. Oh, WWE War Game. I'm thinking like the Matthew Broderick film from the 80s. I'm like, hey, would you like to play a game? No, I'm probably not going to watch War Games. Yeah, with the crackling wood and everything. Yeah, 100%. You love Growling Rob, the voice of Growling Rob. Yeah, this is what my voice sounds like because my voice is starting to fail because I have this flu and I've been talking so much. So like, yeah, this is like if I just talk normally and I don't, like what's going on, guys, or anything like that. Like if I just talk regularly, then my voice sounds, it sounds like very cracked and broken. Yeah, like kind of screwed up. So, I mean, do you guys want me to talk like this for the rest of the stream? Just like what's going on, guys? Let's just talk about it. I know, like there are voices that just hit you in a certain way where it's just like Jesus. But Mistress Death in Secret Wars, maybe. I don't know. Who do I think the main villain will be in Batman Part 2? The rumor is that it's going to be Hush. I don't know if it is, but the rumor is that it's going to be Hush. They're not going to bring the Joker in. What comic book would you recommend for someone just getting into the X-Men series? Okay. That's not a small question. Do you want to see the X-Men constantly struggling? Like, do you want to see life just really bad for the X-Men constantly? Or do you want to see the X-Men just like living their best life, and things aren't that bad. They could be worse, but it's they're just sort of living life, that sort of thing. Which one do you want? Kang is better than Thanos? That's ridiculous. Mr. Freeze would be amazing. He'd be a great villain. Like he would be a great villain. Throw him straight into House of X. It's not a bad place to start. Cutie Pie Rob. Snuggle. It's been a hot minute since you've live streamed on Twitch, on YouTube or Twitch. Rest in peace, Twitch channel. Yeah. Is the Punisher? If the Punisher got another season or movie, who would you cast as Barracuda? Michael Jai White. Instantly. Like Michael Jai White. I don't play Marvel Legends. Yeah. Okay, Herbert. That's exactly what I was gonna say. Right? God Loves Man Kills, Days of Future Past. God Loves Man Kills. If you really want to see the X-Men just like getting wrecked, like they just can't catch a moment. They just can't get a moment's peace. If that's the story that you want, go read God Loves Man Kills. It's literally a religious fanatic that like he almost destroys the X-Men. Just like some crazy guy who leads who leads the Purifiers, right? Like William Stryker. Days of Future Past is really less about the X-Men per se and more about the superhero community in its entirety. If you're reading the newer version, if you're reading the old school Uncanny X-Men 141 and 142, yeah, it's 100% about the X-Men. It's if you could call them that, right? Storm, Colossus, Magneto, Wolverine, more like a ragtag band of like refugee escapees. But if you want to see the X-Men just kind of like, I mean, they got to deal with their fair share of problems, but like they're pretty white kids with problems. Life's not that bad. You know what I mean? Like if you want to see that team, go read House and Powers of X. It's that. It's not until you get to Inferno that you realize that Moira McTaggart was a prick. Rob, who's your favorite street level villain and favorite world level villain? Street level villain? Ooh, because there's a lot of them out there in Marvel. Um, I would say Muse. Uh, it should not be me, Alex. I do not want to play Apocalypse in the MCU. I think I would be an amazing voice for Apocalypse in X-Men '97, but as I understand it, they're undoing all that stuff for reasons that make sense to nobody but themselves. Um, I like Muse in Daredevil, because Muse was crazy. Like Muse was absolute. How many of you guys know about the story with Muse, where like he pokes out the eyes of Foggy, like he literally gouges Foggy Nelson's eyes out of his face. Like there's this point where like he runs up on Foggy and he's just like, bah! Like right in his eyes. It was nuts. Um, it was crazy. But Muse was really really cool. Like I loved the character of Muse. Um, I will say though, in the Marvel in Kingpin probably grew on me more during Devil's Reign than he ever had before. Oh, Muse is amazing. Yeah, Muse is phenomenal. I think we have a video. What is it, like Daredevil hates fighting Muse or something like that? It's the thumbnail of him like just poking Foggy Nelson's eyes out. Like I don't know why I keep I don't know why I keep doing that. But yeah, no. Yeah, I love Daredevil. I'm sorry, I loved Kingpin during Devil's Reign, because the greatest thing about Devil's Reign is that if you read, um, oh my God, who was writing Daredevil at the time? Um, oh my God, Chip Zdarsky. If you read Chip Zdarsky's Daredevil run going into Devil's Reign, the whole point of why Devil's Reign happens is because Kingpin has a grudge against Daredevil. That like Daredevil wiped knowledge of his identity from Kingpin's mind. And Kingpin knows he knew, but he doesn't know why he doesn't know. And he knows that like Daredevil is the guy who's responsible for some reason. And Daredevil even like taunts him, in some ways. And so I think that when you look at Devil's Reign, it's just like Deshaun is going to bat for Kang. Okay, Sean, that'll okay, bro. But no, I think Devil's Reign it was great because it showed how far the Kingpin was willing to go to get revenge on one guy. Right? It was great. It was great. As far as world level villains go, um, there was a time that I would have said Magneto, but Magneto over the course of the entire House and Powers of X, running all the way up until the ending of the Krakoa age. Now he's just boring. Like now he's not very interesting at all. He feels like Magneto during like the X-Men Bendis era, right? The all new X-Men Bendis era. He's there, right? And like he does some stuff sometimes, but like he doesn't really feel like he matters. Um, I think that because Magneto was done so well during that whole time period that you can't really put him in that category anymore. So I would go as far as to argue for a world level villain. Marvel doesn't have lots of world level villains. For a memory wipe. Uh Maybe Orcus as a concept. No, you know what? I would say Nimrod from the whole House and Powers of X era, the whole like Krakoa era. Like I would say Nimrod was phenomenal. I loved Nimrod during that point. Um, I mean Zodiac from Moon Knight was really cool, but yeah, I felt like the issue with Zodiac is by the time you got around to seeing Zodiac being used, I wasn't really that interested in him anymore. Um, but he was almost kind of like a Joker for Daredevil. I don't even know if that's really if that's the best description to use for him. But we need to turn our heat up, man. It is getting chilly in here. Start that fan. But yeah, can you put it to rest? Dr. Manhattan, adult Franklin Richards, who's on top? I'm inclined to give it to Dr. Manhattan, and only because Dr. Manhattan left one universe and went to another. Franklin has never left the main Marvel universe. He existed in Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers when when the Time Stone takes Captain America 50,000 years into the future. Franklin Richards is there, right? And like he'll survive into the end of time, going into the next universe, with after merging with Galactus. But like there's no instance that I'm aware of where Franklin Richards left the main Marvel universe and went into another universe and started like influencing it and impacting it. So just based on that, I'm inclined to give it to Dr. Manhattan. Sinister was a greater world villain. Maybe. But oh, cheers for the good discussion while packing. Yeah, where are you going, dude? Where are you moving to? Dr. Manhattan. Yeah, Dr. Manhattan was cracked. Like it was nuts. Again, I mean, these are just my opinions, right? I mean, it's not. None of these are absolutes. It is one of the things that drives me crazy. Somebody will say, Rob, what do you think about this? And it's like, well, okay, here's what I think. People are like, this is the absolute standard now because comics explains that. And it's like, no. It's just my opinion. It's not an absolute rule. What's a writer-artist combo that I'd want to see for a specific character or characters? A specific character or characters. Jonathan Hickman and either Andrea Sorrentino on art. He's the one that drew the Old Man Logan series from Jeff Lemire. He also drew Green Arrow, I think it was, from the New 52 run. But Jonathan Hickman with either Andrea Sorrentino or Esad Ribic, who was the artist for Secret Wars 2015. I'd want to see them collaborate on a Justice Society of America comic from DC or a League of Superheroes comic. Was it the League of Superheroes? Legion, the Legion of Superheroes. A Legion of Superheroes comic. That would be dope. I think Justice Society would be better. Ideally, I would love to see a Jonathan Hickman and Alex Ross JSA comic. Like that would be an incredible comic. But I feel like Alex Ross's art style doesn't really lend itself to like Jonathan Hickman's style of storytelling. So I don't know that would work. Yeah, Legion of Superheroes. Yeah, Paul was like, "You're cooking, man." The Absolute Universe is good. It is GOAT status. Yeah, it's phenomenal. One day I want my son to be a reality breaking being like Franklin Richards. If he's not, you'll disown him. Yeah, Esad Ribic's work is phenomenal. All right, guys, I'm only going to stay on here for a couple more minutes, and then I'm going to bounce off. But yeah, so it's I think most people are probably getting ready for Thanksgiving at this point. So, bring back the Legion of Superheroes. As a disabled person, those comics and Doom Patrol, along with characters like Jessica Cruz, were very precious to me. Yeah, because they kind of represented one of the coolest things. So for those of you guys who never read it, when DC launched Rebirth, what was it? It was Sam Humphries who wrote Green Lantern's Rebirth. Because DC had two Green Lantern comics going on at the time. You had Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps by Robert Venditti, which was phenomenal. And it was a great comic book run. And then you had Green Lanterns. And Green Lanterns was great because it just focused on Jessica Cruz and Simon Baz. And if you didn't know who they were, Sam Humphries gave you enough of an explanation in the first 6 issues that, like, you were good enough to make do, right? You're like, oh, okay, I got a general enough idea, and you just kind of go forward from there. But Jessica Cruz dealt with, like, crippling anxiety. And as I understood it, I think Sam Humphries did an interview where, like, he very much struggled with anxiety. So he wrote himself into her character. And you really felt it with the kind of things that her character dealt with. It was really, really cool. When am I going to cover Storm's solo book? I'm not 100% sure yet. I'm waiting to see how it develops, and if anything happens, because I don't want to leave people on like a massive cliffhanger, and then like it just falls off after that because it's just trash, and it's just like have to force myself to cover it. So, um, but yeah, I've been watching since 2013. Thank you, Energy. I appreciate it. All right, guys, I'm gonna bounce off here. Like we covered Annihilation a long time ago. I'm gonna bounce off here. Yeah, like my voice is starting to run out. This flu's catching up to me. I'm getting tired. So I'm gonna go relax for a little bit. And yeah, so thanks for coming out, guys. I appreciate it. Go enjoy your turkey day. I will catch you all later. Peace.